Hey, everybody, welcome to Tech Beat, where leaders learn, innovate, and grow. My name is Earl Foote, your host. I am founder, CEO of Nexus IT. Nexus IT is a white-gloved, outsourced IT support, cybersecurity, compliance, and cloud firm based here in northern Utah and servicing a nationwide footprint. Welcome to the brand new Nexus IT Tech Beat podcast studio with my friend, my homie, Jeff Erickson. We're happy to have Jeff here. How do you feel about being the first guest in the podcast studio?
This is crazy.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be me. It should be somebody else.
It should be you.
This is so cool. I do love the orange guitar and the whole setup. This is amazing.
Isn't this cool?
Very cool.
Yeah. Our director of marketing, Mallory Lovestad, this is her brainchild. She put it all together.
Man.
The guitar was a gift from our marketing firm, Lemonade Stand. Shout out, to Greg Trimble, Derek Miner. Those are some good guys. They take good care of us. Of course, if you know me, I'm in a band and music's kind of a thing of mine. So, we thought we'd bring together tech and a little bit of music all in
so
one.
Cool.
Might be a little confusing, but we like it.
No, this is awesome.
Makes sense for us,
Yep.
All right, so let me get to a few announcements real quick, and we're going to come back around, introduce Jeff, and we're going to get down to the conversation of the hour. So let's see. First off, Tech Beat is now on. Give me one sec. Sorry about that. Clear to the throat. Tech Beat is now on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Google, and all major podcast platforms. Go out, subscribe. We would appreciate your viewership and your listenership there. We will take questions as applicable throughout the hour and questions at the end of the hour. So if you have any of those burning questions you've been, wanting to ask Jeff Erickson, throw them out there. We all know that everybody loves him. So throw them out there in whatever platform you're joining us from. We'll do our best to get to those. Upcoming Tech Beat episodes, I'll be joined by Dustin Kenyon and Rob Pilecki, co-founders of Washi, on May 22nd. Monty Deer, CEO of Kizik, on June 8th. Johnny Hanna is lined up. Actually, Derek Miner and Greg Trimble from Lemonade Stand are lined up as well. Paul Shin, Andrea Guthrie, who is Chief Strategy Officer over at Kiln. So we've got some really cool guests. There's more lining up, as we speak. I know those are being booked out kind of into Q1, Q2 now. We book pretty quick here on Tech Beats, so keep an eye out for announcements around those segments and join us live, and then go consume those on whatever podcast platform you want to after. A reminder, these are recorded immediately after they're live. They are available on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube immediately after the segment is done. So to my guest of the hour, if you live in Utah or anywhere near the proximity, you know this guy. You know that he's potentially one of the most impactful guys in the history of the startup ecosystem in Utah. And I'm not, this isn't lip service. This is, reality of a powerhouse of a guy that has really been a community champion, who's really leaned into the community and founders, young budding or just budding founders, and really done so much amazing work to connect ideas, resources, on-ramps, to help people be more successful and hack their journey. So, but officially, here's the bio.
You're too kind. Too kind, Earl.
It's all absolutely accurate, and it is. Jeff leads the partnerships team at Forecaster, a leading software company that helps make financial modeling easy for founders raising capital. He is the founder of the Startup Stack and co-founder of Pitch Us, and was the founder and CEO of a successful consumer goods company that was ranked number 138 on the Inc. 500 list of fastest growing companies. That's super impressive. Jeff is passionate about startups and enjoys working with founders and mentoring entrepreneurs. I think that's very visible by what we see you do and how we see you engage in the community. So, Jeff, Welcome, my friend.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Earl, I mean, seriously,
These mics are
what an
awkward,
honor.
you notice, right? Shake hands.
Oh.
So glad you're here with me. So glad that you are guest number one in the podcast studio.
Oh my gosh, I listened to the upcoming guests. I'm like, how did I get on that list?
Oh, come on now.
That's impressive list.
Everybody knows again that you are one hell of a guy and somebody that everybody looks up to here in Utah and beyond. I see, people nationwide that engage with who Jeff Erickson is, and the content you produce and the things you do. The way you engage in the community. It's really quite inspiring. And I hope that that the impact you've had goes well beyond what I think you even dream or imagine that it does.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I feel like you're way too kind here. This is, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Glad to have you here. So let's talk about how did you become Jeff Erickson of now, right? I mean, somewhere you grew up, somewhere you were a kid, you were a teenager, maybe some university, ultimately, a founder, and then, you've done so many very interesting things since. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, I think early on, I always loved, like, I didn't know I loved business, but I liked being an entrepreneurial, I guess. Some of the earliest memories I have is being as kids, we used to like to go hunt for golf balls at the Bountiful Ridge Golf Course. And we would go sneak onto the course and find golf balls. And then every Saturday, we would go out and sell the golf balls to the golfers. And we got so good at it that the golf course kind of kicked us off and said, you can't do that on the property. So we set up a stand on the street leading up to the golf course. And so then they eventually said, you have to have
lemonade
a business
stand, but a golf ball stand.
It was a golf ball stand.
It's brilliant.
And we started doing well enough, I guess, that we got the cops called on us and they said, hey, you don't have a business license. I mean, imagine this. I mean,
come on,
two little kids, and we're out there selling golf balls. And
how old were you?
This was probably had to be like 6th grade or junior high.
Yeah, that seems like a misguided, golf course manager, right? Like, enable kids like that, empower them, help them out.
Yes, totally agree.
Yeah,
totally agree.
Yeah.
So now whenever I see kids that are selling golf balls or lemonade or something like that, you always want to stop and just encourage that behavior, because I think there's something to that of your first business lessons. It's like, I can provide something of service to somebody else and benefit from it.
Yeah.
And so those were some early memories. I remember
your cost of goods were low too. Like,
and the cost of goods were really low. We didn't know that it was cost of goods at the time, but now looking back, it's like, yeah, all that stuff makes more sense.
It was your manual labor to go scrap the balls,
That's right. Yeah. And we had fun doing it.
Yeah,
so
of course.
It was something we loved doing. So anyways, I remember, and I do remember my mom always encouraging me to do things like that. And she took me and my friend down to try and get a business license so that we could actually keep selling golf balls.
That's awesome. What a great mom.
So very cool. And my mom also inspired me just by some of the stuff she did. She was an author and wrote several books. She actually included me in writing one of her books.
Oh, wow.
And I got to help her with that. And then she let me self-publish her book, which she shouldn't have done because I didn't do a very good job of it.
This was about what year?
This was while I was going to the university.
Yeah, but still, this is probably really before the times of self-publishing,
Oh yeah.
Like turnkey self-publishing wasn't a thing.
Long time ago. You didn't have the internet to self-publish. This was like, we had to go to get it printed.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm old, and I know you're a few years older than me, so we're not exactly spring chicken.
Yeah, when we say self-publish, it's totally different than today.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. We went and got inventory of books and everything. We sold books, put my mom out on tour and everything. She should have gone to a real publisher. But she let me, try my hand at that. And again, I think it was things like that that gave me the permission to be an entrepreneur, because that was not what I saw the path being when I went to the university. It was go get a job. And my dad was, he was a CPA, it was a partner at Deloitte and Touche, which was, a big accounting firm.
Yeah.
He was there for 30 plus years and stable, one
Traditional
job, traditional. It's like,
conservative boomer career. Yeah.
that's what you do.
Yeah.
It's like,
My dad did too.
you go get a job and they take care of you.
Yeah.
And so I had kind of both of those experiences. And I guess it was coming out of the university. So I went to the University of Utah, grew up here in Utah. Graduated in accounting. I think mostly because my dad was an accountant. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I had heard that, well, if you're going to go into business, need to know accounting.
Yeah. You need finance. Sure.
And so I'm like, okay, I'll do accounting. Absolutely hated it. I mean, I did not like it at all.
Yeah.
And I kind of slogged my way through getting an accounting degree.
You were already a mogul brain at this point. You were already,
yeah, I was definitely into skiing while I was going through the university.
Yeah.
But, and then I got out and I've got an accounting degree and I'm like, I don't want to be an accountant. And so, well, what should I do? And so it's like, well, everybody says to go get more education. So I'm going to go get my MBA.
There you go.
And so I just went right into my MBA program at the University of Utah, did finance, and actually enjoyed the finance program. Really had some great professors. I felt like the MBA program was a step above the undergraduate programs.
Sure. Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I really didn't know the options.
The accounting was probably a nice foundation though for that finance piece.
Oh, it totally was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, I mean, it was beneficial. Same time, I was going to the university to kind of check a box. I was like, okay, get your degree. Now I got my degree, but I came out going, now what? I don't know what I want to do.
Right.
And so it's kind of an interesting time. And I guess it kind of shaped me in terms of how the advice that I've given to my kids, because it's a little bit different than the advice I got, in terms of, you just go to the university to check off a box and you get a degree and you're set. I don't think that's not what I found. And I don't think that's the way things work today.
Yeah, no, it's very different, right? To see the journey of our parents, the journey of our generation. We were still like, you just go get a job and do your job, kind of a generation, right? Like,
yep.
Doesn't really matter what you do. Whatever that test is they give you in high school that tells you what you're supposed to be, right? You just kind of do that thing,
Yeah. Zookeeper.
Is that what you had?
Probably.
I don't remember what mine was, honestly, but it wasn't about self-awareness and self-discovery and like what am I passionate about? What do I really enjoy? Right. It was like you need to go make a living, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how we've changed. Yeah, have we swung the pendulum too far, one way or the other? Maybe, right? That's debatable. But yeah, it's things have changed so much. Okay, so you graduate university, you're like, what do I want to do? So what happens?
Well, I'm in finance, and so I was really interested in investments. I liked, playing around the stock market. Was the .com boom at the time, and so I went into an investment firm. Spent about 4 years at a local investment firm here.
Yeah.
We did a bunch of different creative financing deals that others wouldn't do and would take a little more risk, a little more return, and it was kind of cool. I got to be on the investment committee and making some decisions or helping make some decisions.
That's fun.
And so I really enjoyed it. And one of the partners there, he was doing some venture debt deals and structuring warrants. And I'm like, oh, this is super cool.
Yeah.
And he ended up leaving the firm and going to this little startup. And he's like, he ended up taking me with him.
Okay.
So I end up at this little startup that, I was probably employee number 15, and they just needed people. And so they brought me on. They didn't know what I was supposed to do. My job description was, why don't you just start answering phones, listen to other people, and kind of help out people as they start calling in.
It's a startup. You
It's
do
a
whatever it
startup.
takes.
And so they're like, yeah, just kind of figure it out and see where you can add some value. And so I got into this role of a startup, and I started to see how it operated, and I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. You've got 15 people, and it was like 30 people, and it was
Wow,
like
nice.
50 people, and it was like growing, and everybody's like super excited. We just raised some money now, and I mean, it just started growing. It was so fast
What
paced.
space was this in?
This was in the ISP space, so it
ISP. All
kind of
right. Hey.
dates me back
Yeah.
back a
Dial
little
up.
while. Dial
Oh,
up,
wow. Yeah.
dial up.
Yeah.
But I mean, we started to get some good traction, and that company, it started really taking off, and I just loved it. And I went from trying to figure out what can I do to add value. Um, I started seeing these opportunities. I'm like, oh, we could go into these types of companies, and they would be a great fit. So I started calling people that I knew were in a certain space and saying, hey, could we talk to you about this? And I started setting up meetings, and all of a sudden we started closing deals.
Natural segue into business
And
development.
it
Look
was
at you.
it
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
very natural segue
Yeah.
into creating deals. And I was like, I really like this. I like seeing that we can add value to another company, and we can, mutually become 1 + 1 = 3, and we can both benefit.
Yep.
So kind of this win-win-win opportunity, because the customers ultimately benefit as well that we're
Of course.
providing. I'm like, this is so cool because everybody wins. There's like, this makes so much sense.
Brand new back in that day. I mean, suddenly you're giving companies access to the world, right? Through
Oh
a
yeah,
dial-up internet connection,
right,
or
right.
ISDN, maybe,
Yeah, eventually,
Yeah,
yes.
T1s and, all the youngsters are like, what is all that stuff? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
but anyway, so that was my introduction to startups. And again, I fell in love with the fast pace, the entrepreneur, just vibe that you have in a startup.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, this is what I love.
Yeah.
So that was my intro to startups, and probably where I really gained that one, respect for founders, but kind of two, just a love for the energy, the optimism, the how to change the world mentality.
Right.
That was all just kind of came together, and I'm like, I really like this.
Yeah. I get the question fairly often. People ask me, as an established entrepreneur, who's been at your main gig for 2.5 decades, why the heck do you hang out in these startup communities, right? And I'm like, the energy is so fantastic.
Yes.
Like, it keeps me motivated. It keeps me, and like, the ideas of, these budding founders, and again, the way they're like trying to, solve challenges for the world, right? Look at the world through a different lens and be like, what can we do about this? Like, that's all super fascinating to me. And that energy is just like, there's few things for me that are quite like that energy, right? So
Oh, totally
I get
agree.
it. Yeah. Those
It
early
was
days of a startup are pretty rad.
very different than working in a job where you show up and you kind of watch the clock and go, oh, it's 5 o'clock. Yes. Totally different when
Yeah.
you're in an entrepreneurial environment where it's like, oh man, it's already 5 o'clock. I've got so much that I want to still do.
Right.
And totally different mindset. And I really love that environment. And I think it kind of attracts those type of people that are not just in it to collect a paycheck.
Yeah.
There's like something more, like we're working towards a common goal that we all really want to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
Well,
probably see that here in your business.
We
I mean,
absolutely do. And that's something we look for as we try to hire people. I mean, honestly, we're looking for people that want to make an impact, right? Like people
right.
that want to be entrepreneurs, that want to, to see the vision of what we're building and are like, I want on board with that. And I want to figure out how I can be, I can not just add value, but have significant impact in the process. Right.
Yep.
So, yeah, no, that's super cool. So let's talk about, kind of the transition then from, that early entrepreneurial experience to Jeff Erickson becomes, an entrepreneur himself, a CEO, right? And again, number 138 on the Inc. 500 fast growth. That's pretty serious. And then ultimately you exit that company. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, this goes back to my wife, actually. So
Hey,
you know Inger.
I do know Inger.
And
yep, she's a powerhouse herself. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And this is a fascinating story, because here I am thinking,
hey, wait, how did you ever land Inger? That's my question.
Yeah, good question. You'll have to ask her that. Yeah,
she's pretty cool.
I had to convince her. So I think it was that business development experience,
right?
Somehow
exactly.
This will work.
Spun the story right,
Yes.
Yeah. You guys are the perfect couple.
Anyway, here's the crazy thing is that here I am going through a startup, and I'm thinking this is super cool. I come out of that one and I'm like, okay, I go off and start another company with some friends, and so we've got this company going and it's doing pretty good. And we're feeling entrepreneur. I'm like one of 3 founders, and we've got some other folks that we're bringing on. And at the same time, Inger has a hobby, and she starts doing this thing and starting to share it with different people. And it starts to kind of turn into a business.
So you guys are married at this point?
We're married.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And I remember her going around and sharing this hobby of hers with all the neighbors, and then it started to spread, and pretty soon people were like knocking on our door, hey, can we get some of this vinyl lettering and the home decor type stuff? And it started to kind of blow up. Well, it got to a point where I had a friend of mine call, and he's like, Jeff, what in the world are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, McKay. What did I do? Am I in trouble? He's like, yeah, you got me kicked out of my house yesterday. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I came home. Your wife's at my house, and there's like 30 other women. My wife won't let me in the house. And because they had all these people, and Inger was sharing
like a home decor party or something. It
was like a home decor party.
Yeah, there you go. All right.
And he's like, you need to come and talk to the 2 founders that run this business with him. And so he made an intro, and we started talking about what we were doing, or what Inger was doing. I put together some financial plans and said, here's what we think it could be. And we kind of put a little packet together, and ultimately they said, we think we could partner with you and make this really work. They were a technology company.
Yeah.
And I remember Inger coming home, and she would come home and she would say, okay, I just made like $1,000 or $1,500. And I would go, no, you didn't. You collected 1,500, but you've got a ton of work to do here.
And a 2-hour party.
At a 2-hour party.
Yeah. Hey, that's not bad.
Yeah. So it was great, but then I'd see her up at night for the next 3 nights, and she didn't sleep.
Yeah, sure.
Fulfilling orders. And I'm like, okay, if you really look at this, you're making like $5 an hour or something.
Right.
I mean, let's put this together. This has to be scalable somehow. And so we started to figure out, how can this work and be scalable? And it couldn't happen without technology.
Yeah.
So that's where these partners came in, and, talk about a synergistic relationship. They came in as technology partners, added some capital. We all put some capital in together, and we kind of shut down the business, reshaped it, put it to where it could be scalable, and we started growing, and it took off. Man. So it was really amazing. Inger's brainchild. Inger was the creative mind and vision behind the whole thing, and it was really cool to see that take off to the point where the company that I had started, it really didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And I kind of stepped out of that and started to help run the this other company.
It's cool that you guys could do that together, right? And I imagine you had to offshore production and all that kind of stuff.
We actually it was here.
Okay, it was here. Okay.
We manufactured everything in Salt Lake. We had about 350 employees at the peak, and
wow.
I mean, it was really the technology partners that put this all together and made it so we could manufacture everything more efficiently than anybody else out there.
Man, that's cool. That's cool. And how long did you guys have the company before you
ran it for about 10 years.
That's what I thought.
And then we sold it, and at the time I was running it as a CEO, and they made me stay on for 3 years as the CEO,
Sure.
which was 2 years too long.
Yeah.
It wasn't very fun after we sold it.
Yeah, you don't see those long transition plans very often anymore. Those long earnouts, they
Yeah.
once, because founders are founders, right? And once you're no longer really in the driver's seat, it's a tough position to be in,
Yeah.
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 I think there's a lot that goes into that. And
Yeah.
I think it can work. I mean, if you've got the right team and the right person in place and everything. But man, those last 2 years were
Bit of a
tough.
slog.
Yeah.
I imagine. Yeah. Yeah. I can totally see that. And I've had so many friends go through that journey of like, suddenly they report to somebody else and, it's no longer their vision, right? You're no longer building kind of your baby, right? You're building something
Well,
for
and it
somebody
fits
else.
into this much bigger picture.
Yeah.
That you don't always have control over.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, there were a lot of factors that went into that, but yeah, I mean, and after that, I realized I wanted to still be in the startup space, and I got to take a little break, but ultimately I wanted to be kind of back in the tech space, and so I started to. That's when I really started to network, because ultimately for 10, maybe 13 years, I was working the consumer space, direct to consumer, and it was 99% women, and it was Facebook. I mean, it was like, that was Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
I built a fairly good network there, just kind of in that space. But when that was gone, it was like, I don't think that's the space I want to dive back into. And it was kind of starting over from scratch. And I was like, I want to get back into like tech, the tech startup space.
And what year did you sell the business?
Oh man, when was that? 2012 maybe?
Okay.
12, 13.
So 10 or 11 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's about right.
Yeah. That's about the time we saw you really coming on the scene, getting out there,
That's about right. Yeah. Cause
yeah.
I mean, that's where I had to go out and kind of go, okay, who are the players around that I want to kind of hang out with? Who's in the tech scene? I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of missed the era of Omniture and, Adobe Acquire, all that stuff. I kind of missed a lot of that because I was in a totally different space.
Yep. I was around doing business during that time. It's just those were different crowds, right? Those were, it was the ecosystem in Utah, and particularly the tech ecosystem, was not as connected as it is today.
For sure.
Not as inclusive as it is today, right?
Yeah.
And there's still work to be done on all those fronts, which, I know guys like you and I, those are kind of some of the things we try to work on, not just us. There's a lot of people, right, that try to be community builders and enablers, right? But I think there's a nice segue there. Jeff Erickson, the home goods CPG CEO, who's an influencer on Facebook and Instagram, right?
No, that sounds really crazy.
Yeah. It's probably accurate though, because look at your game on LinkedIn. So that'll be a nice segue to go to LinkedIn. But before we go there, I want to back up. There's a side to Jeff Erickson that I think most people know about, but early on in your youth, you became a very prolific skier.
I don't know about prolific.
Come on now. So you still out ski people in their 20s, Jeff. You're, backcountry doing crazy stuff that, I've given up on that stuff at this point. Like I'm a steep blue kind of guy, maybe a little black here and there, but my knees don't do the moguls anymore, and you're in a high school band called the Electric Ski Poles, right? Because you and your buddies are your mogul brains, as you put it, right? Which, by the way, our bands played together.
We did during COVID.
Yes, we were rebels. We put on a concert during COVID. Right? No, actually, the concert was billed before COVID hit, and then COVID hit, and we had to pivot and do a live stream with our
Live
buddy Vic
stream.
Gill at Start.
That's right.
Yeah, which Vic just landed a round for Start.
I
and,
saw that.
is moving on that right now.
So cool.
Yeah, we went out a couple weeks ago to hang out.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, he's such a good guy. I love Vic to death. Yeah. So, and I'm super, happy to see him, land around and kind of get back to, building that. He's pivoted a bit, so it'll be interesting to see what he, what he. And
you got to have him on the show.
Oh, I will. I definitely.
Yeah,
will.
that would be awesome.
Yeah, he's such a man. Talk about a knowledgeable guy, right?
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah, we got to play we got to jam together at the Union Events Center. Play with your band. We had a quasi audience.
Yeah.
We didn't really, I mean, what was there, 80 people in the room or something, but
right.
And
for COVID, that was a big group to get together.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's spacing out.
That was probably May or June of 2020.
I actually went straight to the concert from skiing. So
okay.
we were still skiing. It wasn't June. It was
okay.
probably
April. Yeah. Okay, so it was like a month into COVID, maybe.
Yeah, because I remember when the singer in our band, Mike, he and I were skiing together that day, and we went straight to the concert.
That's right. I remember you guys showed up with your sunburnt faces.
Yeah,
yeah. That was a good time. We did live stream it, which was an interest. That was the first time we'd ever done a live stream concert.
That was pretty cool.
Kind of interesting. So tell us a little bit more about that, though. The rock and roll skier side of Jeff Erickson.
Well, yeah, growing up here in Utah, I mean, obviously skiing was a big thing. We, even when I was young, we'd get one of our parents. I mean, you appreciate more as a parent, but they would drive us up to the ski resort. They would drive home and then come up and pick us up. Sometimes would rotate, whose parents. But I'm like, wow, that's a pretty good commitment there, especially on the snowy days when we're out having fun, and then they have to drive up the canyon and pick us up. And man, props to all of our parents.
Right.
But grew up skiing, absolutely loved it. And one of my buddies and I, we started skiing moguls back when it wasn't like an Olympic sport or anything. And that became our thing. We got pretty good at skiing moguls. We'd compete in all the competitions and that around here, and eventually did like the Pro Mogul Tour and that together. So we loved skiing.
Yeah.
And in junior high, my friend and I, we started, trying to figure out how to play the guitar, and and we started making up ski songs. And so that's kind of
fantastic. You've heard of surf punk? This is ski punk.
It was the surf punks, and that was some of it. It was kind of the surf punks and the Ramones. That was kind of the vibe there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we came up with a bunch of ski songs, and we started, forming a band. This was back before you could really do anything digitally. And so, I mean, the recordings that we had were on cassette tapes and things like that. So
cassette tapes
back in the day.
Yeah. The Gen Zers are like, what?
I know, what is a cassette? They've seen it
yeah.
on T-shirts where they have that little.
Right.
I might see it's kind of that retro thing, but
barely even know what a CD is, right? But
probably not.
They do know what LPs are now, but yeah,
that's right. They're coming back.
Right
there, you go.
So, you guys remind me, you opened for somebody pretty big in Salt Lake too.
It wasn't super big. I mean, Talon was one, and but no, we weren't like opening for the Red Hot Chili Peppers or anything. Not like you guys.
We've never opened for the Chili Peppers. Oh, come on.
You guys have a legit band.
Yeah, come on.
So
I mean,
we were, our drummer was legit, and he did play for some big bands, but Mike and I were kind of hackers and more skiers than musicians.
Yeah, but you guys, the music's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. The lyrics are, they're hilarious. It's like
they're hilarious.
Reminds me of like, in junior high when I was listening to like the Dead Milkmen, and stuff like that, right? Just zany kind of, ski punk, songs. A lot of fun. It was good to play with you guys too. So
that was awesome.
So you get your exposure to social media, through Facebook, Instagram, probably some Pinterest, in that, consumer home goods kind of space, right? Catering to a, very female prominent kind of crowd, right?
For sure. Yep.
And now the reality is Jeff Erickson is probably one of the most known people in Utah because of your presence on LinkedIn, and because of the way that you show up and engage in the community. So tell us a little bit about maybe what you learned in those early days of, how you engaged in, Facebook and Instagram, and how that's transitioned into LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think back on, because I mean, I did have a pretty good presence on Facebook. It was 99% women. It was my audience, and
they weren't watching for the looks, Jeff.
No, and Inger was okay with it, because I mean, it was our company, and
sure,
we were
you're
kind
making
of the
money.
face.
Yeah,
but yeah, that was not something that translated real well into, I want to get into the tech ecosystem and that. And so I had to kind of start over. It was like, okay, got to figure this out. LinkedIn or Facebook's not where these folks are hanging out. I would go to, I started going to like 1,000,000 Cups. I started going to any events, some of the Silicon Slope stuff around here, and just kind of seeing who's out there. And the way to connect, it looked like, is like, oh, are you on LinkedIn? That was kind of the thing. Is like, well, no, not really. I mean,
what's that?
Yeah, it was kind of like, none of the people I was dealing with are on LinkedIn. That was not a channel. And so I remember early on, there was this, I had like 200 followers on LinkedIn or something. And I'm like, I remember looking at job requirements, and it said, must have 1,000 LinkedIn followers or something like that. And that was really weird.
Yeah, that's
I don't think you see that anymore, no. But I remember seeing that, and I'm like, they're going to actually look at how many LinkedIn followers I have. It's like, what?
Yeah.
And so
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I started like being really cognizant of that. And I'm like, okay, I've got like 200, and it's like, I don't even qualify for, a business development position in whatever. It's like, okay, what is this? And I remember there's this thing on LinkedIn where it says, 500 plus.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I got to get over 500 people, so that it at least shows 500 plus on there. And,
right.
And it's like, not this, you've got 100 people that you're connected with. And so, I started going to these events and going, okay, who are the people that you want to connect with? And started kind of inviting those people to, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn. Early on, that was kind of what I did. It was kind of this mix between, okay, who do I want to get to know in the community? I'll connect with them on LinkedIn, and then, going to events and then meeting them in person, or vice versa, meeting somebody in person and going, hey, let's connect on LinkedIn, and then getting to know them almost better that way, where I see what they're posting about. And it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. The company that they're representing, or, the stuff that they're doing, or whatever. And it really helped me kind of immerse myself in the tech scene, because those were the people that I was connecting with. And what was cool is, on LinkedIn, you can kind of segment it. So if I was like way into biotech, it would have been all biotech, but that wasn't me. I was like, I want to know the tech movers and shakers in this community. And that's where it started, figuring out who they were, and then kind of following what they were talking about. That was my education. And I spent a good year kind of getting acclimated or educated in the space, a lot of it through LinkedIn. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, and I guess really, the topic of today is, why waste your time with LinkedIn, right? Which,
yeah.
I'm hearing from you, first off, that LinkedIn hasn't been a waste of your time. Maybe articulate why that is. What's the value that you've extrapolated from it?
And I think, again, early on, I saw great value when I wasn't very connected. It was an easy way to make connections, get to know who you should be connected with, for somebody that was trying to break into a space. And so that was super helpful and very valuable. I think as it started to form, I started to get to know people a bit better and who the players were. And ultimately, I got connected with some folks at eShares, which became Carta
Carta,
later
yeah.
on. And I just, I connected with them on LinkedIn there in San Francisco. And I'm like, okay, this is a cool company.
Yeah.
Like, really like what these guys are doing. I checked them out on, started researching them and going, this is cool. This is a great company. Connected with some of them on LinkedIn. And I looked in, I remember pulling up the website and seeing at the time they were small enough to where they had pictures of every single person at the company.
Yeah.
And I remember going through it and I'm like, okay, there's like the average age is probably like 22. And I think there were like 3 people that were my age or around my age.
Right.
And I'm like, oh man, there's no way I would fit. This is the coolest company, but I don't think I could fit in here.
Yeah.
But anyways, I reached out to some of the guys at the company and just said, hey, this is super cool what you guys are doing. And they reached back out and said, hey, do you know people in Salt Lake that might be interested in kind of what we're doing? And so we started kind of chatting back and forth. And I didn't know it, but they were looking into where they wanted to put their next office.
I remember when they set up office here,
Yeah.
So this is probably 7-ish years ago, 6 or 7 years ago.
Probably about right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe even 8.
Okay.
And so
yeah.
when they were first starting to kind of look,
Right.
and they had narrowed it down to kind of like, I think Salt Lake, Austin, and Denver as kind of areas. And I remember them coming to Salt Lake, and I got to meet some of these guys in person. And by that point, I had become ingrained enough with the community here to where I could introduce them to some meaningful people. And I remember I took them to the Tanner Christmas party.
Okay.
So Tanner throws an amazing Christmas party here every year. And they were like blown away. And I don't know if that was a decision, like a factor in their decision, but ultimately they ended up coming to Utah. And I ended up joining Carta when they came to Utah. And I like to say that would not have happened were it not for LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And that was a huge, huge pivotal moment in my, next career, and getting an opportunity to be in the middle of the tech ecosystem.
Right. Right.
So kind of cool. So when I say, was that worth it? Absolutely. That paid for itself and way more than the time that I invested in LinkedIn.
Sure. And from there, Forecaster, another financial services SaaS company that,
Yep.
that is outside of Utah, that you connected to through LinkedIn as well, so it's not just, career opportunity, which, LinkedIn, that's what, it was originally built around connecting, candidates and employers. Right.
Right.
But it's become so much more, I know as I watch you, Jeff, you are a give first kind of guy, give first and then get organically, naturally, right? I see 100% that's the way you operate. It's my kind of MO as well.
Yeah, I know it is. Yep.
And that's, I like LinkedIn because you can do that. We can do things like create a cool podcast with good thought leadership, good content that helps empower, the entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? Helps other people hack their journeys because, OGs like you and I, it took us a long time to kind of figure out how to be entrepreneurs, right?
Totally.
You had the MBA, I didn't. I was I went to civil engineering school, but still, even at that, an MBA means nothing really when it comes down to executing
Running
and
a
building
business.
a startup.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Oh, for sure.
yeah. And so, that piece alone, but then all that you get back from it, right? For me, community and connections and employees and friends and, business opportunity, right? All of those things, as well as, you stay up to date with what's going on.
Right.
With, the community around you, the micro and macroeconomics of our, of our ecosystem. It helps you understand better what, market sentiment is and like where you should be pivoting decisions and, evolving your products and services. And like that, for me, there's so much, right? It can become a distraction you have to be careful
Agreed.
with, right? You have to remain disciplined and get your work done, right? And make sure that you're actually executing. But there's so much that, can that you can do to add value, and there's so much value you can receive, in my opinion.
Agreed.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about as I think about the godfathers of LinkedIn, the people that like really have understood how to create content on a daily basis in LinkedIn and get significant engagement out of that. You're at the top of that list, Jeff.
Oh man.
You're a guy that I've watched. I'm like, well, how do I steal some ideas from Jeff? What's
And
he doing?
please do. I mean, I steal ideas from others,
Yeah.
and because my reach might be different than theirs, and if I see something that might be valuable, I want to share it.
Yeah, I see the way you craft your posts and everything. Right, they're very well crafted. So maybe let's share with the audience a little bit about your tips and tricks. What have you found to work really well to engage with the community out there?
Yeah, great question. I think one of the things is being authentic. I think that goes a long way. Um, but I think that it's also kind of going into it in terms of adding value. Is this something that can add value to others? Um, and then I think also having a specific audience that you're kind of talking to. I mean, if it's too broad, then I don't know. I've kind of targeted being in the startup space or entrepreneurs or things like that. But again, what that goes back to is that's what I'm passionate about. And so I just kind of share what I'm passionate about, and naturally that will attract others that might benefit from whether it's my experience or things that I'm learning that I can share. Uh, and I think that kind of naturally plays into how LinkedIn can benefit others and you.
Yeah, I like that a lot. A lot of people are like, well, what value do I have to add, right? And it's like we all have our areas where we geek out, right? We all have
Yeah.
our areas where like we go really deep. We go down that rabbit hole. For me, it's infrastructure and cybersecurity, right?
Yep.
And anything related to entrepreneurship. Like I love entrepreneurship, right? And so a lot of people don't realize that all they got to do is be themselves, and just
Yes.
talk about the things that matter to them, and
Right.
they will create audience, naturally. I like the fact that you said authentically, organically. We all get hundreds of BDR, SDR messages a day, automated,
Oh man.
messages through HubSpot or whatever, Salesforce, on LinkedIn every day. And those are tough, right? To like, I wish you could
Even
just,
on LinkedIn, I get LinkedIn messages that are like they have, yeah, they just go straight to junk.
yeah, totally. But it's the people who, again, think about, how do I help others first, right?
Yeah.
Um, and oftentimes that is like you got to create content. Content is king. It can just be simple posts. Like I see people, with a paragraph a day, 2-3 sentences a day with some cool graph or picture that are like getting massive engagement, right?
Right.
You think of like, Simon Sinek's type of, content on Instagram, or, that's, and he does it on, on LinkedIn as well, but just like simple little blurbs, for some people. I'm a little bit more of a long form kind of guy. I mean, this is an hour-long podcast, right? But for some, it's not like you gotta write this massive, masterpiece of diatribe, right? Throw a couple thoughts out there, and sooner or later, it's probably gonna fall on some ears that that it resonates with, and they'll engage, right?
Yeah. I had somebody just recently ask me, like they kind of came to the same thing. It's like, what do I have to share? I don't know what to share. And I'm like, well, what are you interested in right now? They're like, well, I'm like diving into this topic. I'm like, well, what are you reading? They're like, well, I'm reading this one. And then they go off and start telling me about how cool this is. And they just dive into it. I'm like, that's what you share. Like
Yeah.
what you just told me, you just read this article. You take a snippet out of that article that you think is really cool. And you're like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And you share that and then say why you think that's awesome. And now you're adding value because others will probably also think that's awesome. And those are the types of people you're going to attract that are kind of in your tribe or whatever. And there you go. Oh, thanks for sharing that and a link to the article or whatever that you found so cool.
Totally. Yeah. What is Vaynerchuk saying? I'm forgetting. It is repurpose more than you create, or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
Like you don't not everything you create has to be unique, right? Should you put your own twist and spin on it, and should you try to be unique? Yes. Should you try to create some unique content? Absolutely. But the reality is, the most thoughts that any of us are going to have, somebody else has had that thought and expressed it at some moment, maybe in a little bit different, lens, or different words, different perspective. But you don't not all your content has to be brand new. Like,
no, not by
go
any
find
means.
what resonates with you and tell why.
Yeah.
Use like you said, use a quote, right?
So a couple examples. Peter Walker from Carta puts out this amazing data. And so, I'll follow him, and I'll every once in a while I'll see something. I'm like, that is really enlightening. Using this data that he has access to, and he puts this out. Well, I can take that, and he encourages us. He encourages others to take this data and share it with the startup community, because it's, sharing information about safes or different funding mechanism, whatever it is. That's valuable information. And just because Peter posts it or Carta posts it, that doesn't mean that everybody in my network is going to see that.
Right.
And so me being able to take that and go, this was something really cool that I think would be helpful for other, whether they're founders or investors, whatever, is an easy way to share content and add some value. Another example is, you look at something like Tech Buzz. Yep. Love those guys. I follow them, and they don't get the best reach on a lot of things.
Right.
And so I can take something that they've taken all of this time to craft, and pull something out and say, this was really cool what these guys just highlighted. Yeah. And then I can kind of magnify it through my channel and give them more exposure and reach. And maybe somebody goes back and kind of digs into the full research that they did. And now it becomes beneficial to them, but also to a broader community that they can reach.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Mark and Paul are sharp guys, right? They're usually on the forefront of, of announcements in capital raises and acquisitions.
Exactly.
Like this morning, I get their newsletter every morning, right? They announced Spiff's $50 million Series C, right?
Okay, I missed that.
Yeah. Just Jaron Paul and his team. Right,
I wasn't on LinkedIn this morning, apparently.
Yeah. They announced their $50 million Series C this morning.
Oh man, congratulations!
And I think Tech Buzz broke the story, right?
That's awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah. So, and I see a lot of founders get really good engagement just on reusing that content and congratulating their peers, right? Oh, it's so cool to see.
Totally.
Sterling Snow, down at Divvy, he used that today in one of his posts, right? Just, shout out to Jaron Paul and his team,
That's awesome.
Raising on their $50 million series. Of course, Sterling is always the champion of, the Utah tech scene and Utah business scene, all around. So, and he's always, Johnny on the spot to congratulate everybody.
Is he going to be on your podcast?
We need to make that happen.
I think you should.
I need to make that happen. Yeah. Sterling and I have run into each other a few times recently, and I think he's a great guy. So I think we need to have him come tell the story of how, he's the revenue guy behind zero to almost a $3 billion exit in 3 years.
Kidding.
That's a pretty, cool story.
And talk about a LinkedIn influencer.
Yeah.
Sterling would be a great example.
And that's an example of a short form kind of person, right? Mm-hmm. Sterling's not overly verbose. I know I can get way too verbose. But Sterling's like 2 or 3, 4 short sentences, but people love his content.
And a shout out to others. Yep. I mean, that's kind of, and again, I think you can use LinkedIn for that as well. Yeah. Recognizing others. So, it's not about you. Yeah. And that that is a great purpose for the platform.
Yeah. Well, and I guess, that's where, the 80-20, the Pareto rule, kind of applies across the board when it comes to social media as well. 80% of what you publish content wise should not be self-promotional.
Agreed.
It should be like highlighting the community, highlighting, events going on, highlighting thought leadership, things that help people. Yes, you need to tell people your brand story, your product, your services, what you do, how you add value. But that should not be the primary focus. And if every single one of your posts is self-promotional, you will not get an audience.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely right.
So let's see here, Jeff. We're coming down. Actually, just 3 minutes. That
3 minutes.
That went by so
Oh
fast.
man. Oh man.
There were some additional questions. I don't know if there are any. By the way, thank you to Jake Hiller, who's on the other side in the what do we call that? The control room.
The control room.
Yeah, he's in the control room there. Our CRO, Jake Hiller, is kind of helping us produce here today. We appreciate that. I meant to check in with Jake to see if we had any cool questions come across the board. But as we wind down the hour here, first off, just, Jeff, I'm glad you were able to come, and spend this time with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Honestly, just a total honor.
Yeah. I'm glad we got to hang out because we don't, we get to hang out at events here and there, but like just hanging out, you and I, it's pretty difficult to do sometimes.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. This is really fun.
I really always enjoy the quality time I get with you and Inger when that, is applicable. But as we kind of wrap down the hour, what's, maybe one piece of wisdom or a couple pieces of wisdom you want to share with the audience before we sign off?
Oh, one piece of wisdom. That's pretty broad. Something you said, Leon, I think has really resonated with me through the last 2 companies I'm with, and that is give first. It's a Techstars motto. It's what drew me to Forecaster. Forecaster went through Techstars, and the 2 founders, they have give first just kind of ingrained in them, and I remember the motto that really attracted me to Carta was very similar. It was always be helpful. And so I think those 2 things, always be helpful, give first. That motto and mantra is something I really appreciate and try to live up to.
Yeah.
And so I would, if I have any wisdom, it would probably be those 2 mottos.
Sound like great core values to espouse in business and life.
Yeah. As a business, I mean, honestly, that is what has attracted me to these 2 companies, or those core values. And I think you do that, you'll attract good people around you. You'll attract good companies. You'll attract the type of person you are, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. As I think about that, I think when you observe some of the most successful people around, they're good. They're give first kind of people. It's not all about what's in it for them. It's about how can they help others? How can they empower others? How can they help others achieve what they want to achieve? How can they build a broader community and ecosystem that, provides more access to opportunity, for everybody? Those seem to be the people that really flourish,
Yeah.
Seems to me that those that are solo, only focused on themselves,
Takers.
Yeah, they don't. I think as humans we've evolved. Like we don't like disingenuous people. We shy away from them, right? So give first. I like that. That's good parting words.
So last thing on that, because there is a caveat there that not all givers end up on top. Yeah. In fact, there's a great book by Adam Grant called Give and Take. I would encourage everyone to read that because it talks about how givers end up at the bottom, but they also end up at the top. Yeah. There's a difference. And part of that is you do need to be willing to receive, willing to treat yourself as somebody you're giving to as well. But with that mentality, I think that's what creates success. Mm-hmm. One other book I would highly recommend that kind of goes right along with that is The Go Giver. If anybody's ever read that. Same principles of how to how to come out on top while being a giver and coming up out on the very top. But some of that has to do with not getting walked over at the same time.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Being a giver, you have to also know how to take the opportunities that come in front of you, or how to use giving to create those opportunities, right?
Set boundaries even
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely true. So those are great words of wisdom. Jeff, again, thank you for being with me on Tech Beat. I'm so glad
Thank
you were the
you.
inaugural guest in the studio.
Oh my gosh, what an honor.
Yeah, it's such a cool space to hang out with you in. We appreciate our audience for joining us today. Jeff and I are going to sign off, but remember, keep an eye on all the awesome guests that we have coming up, some really great people. We'll have announcements out and those over the next several weeks. So thanks again from the Nexus IT Tech Beat podcast studio. We're going to sign off. We'll see y'all. Have a great day.
Thanks, Earl.